Hello, community, and welcome back to another Keeping It Real with Dr. Anita podcast. I am your host, Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, C-Suite Trusted Advisor, Board Director, and Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Strategy Consultant, helping members of the C-Suite and their teams reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. We are kicking off the month of Black History Month, and I am so excited to have with me as my guest on this series of real conversations from the C-Suite, Ms. Azhelle Ward. And Azhelle, I want to make sure I get this correctly. She's been having way too much fun in the toy industry over the past 12 plus years, working for companies like Toys R Us, Party City, and Madame Alexander, just to name a few. She's climbed up and across the ladder in the toy world, starting out as a designer, gaining 3 toy patents, and eventually becoming a VP at a toy company. Today, Azhelle is known industry-wide as the toy coach and founder of Toy Creators Academy. Azhelle, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Let's do this.
Let's do this. First of all, so in the spirit of fun and excitement, I thought I'd dress a little bit, off from the beaten path, what I normally do. And look at that. We are both wearing pink. And to me, that's always a good sign when my guests and I coordinate and didn't even know it. So I'm looking forward to today. How about you?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's jump right into this. So the first question that I want to ask you based on our meet and greet is this. What was the difference in your C-suite experience as a woman of color working for a company versus being an entrepreneur, especially in the toy industry? Because we don't typically think of toys being created by people of color. I don't know why we don't, but we just don't.
What is very different is how unaware I am of the uncomfortable conversations that are going on. There are very few parts of my toy career right now where I get to see behind the curtain of conversations that probably shouldn't be being had in the first place. Whereas when I worked full time, I would see them 9 to 5 all day long. Now it's if I'm at a certain event, if I'm at a certain meeting. And these are conversations where people might voice that they don't think it's important that we include a certain skin tone. Or these are conversations where somebody says, we should include a certain hairstyle they don't know anything about. Or when somebody doesn't want to apply a technology to a certain type of doll that I know it would be a good fit for because of a cultural reason. So I would see those things blatantly. And then honestly, there were just offhanded comments that people would make that would just be very in my face and a constant reminder of people are holding some stereotypes still. Like we're growing, but we're not all there yet. And there would be a lot of moments of, did I get passed over for this opportunity because of what I look like? And it wasn't with pink hair. It was me being, normal. It was just me with brown hair. Was it getting passed over just because I'm not white? Am I not being taken seriously because of those things? Whereas now, I just don't hear it. They might be saying it, but I don't hear it anymore. And the few times that I do hear it now, when I go to events and I meet with people, I have the larger meetings, I'm shocked. I'm much more shocked because I am not used to it. And my mind goes, I can't believe you're still thinking like that. That is wrong. We cannot go there.
Let's explore that a little bit, because since you've been in the industry for well over 10 years, you would think that attitudes would keep up, but you're finding out that's not necessarily the case.
No, because the attitudes are also tied to dollars. So it becomes, what sells. So they look at what sold last year. And understandably, people don't want to take risks, because if a buyer changes the skin color on a doll and it sells less, that could be their job. If a designer or a company comes and presents a line of product and doesn't include the white doll with the blonde hair, that could be business. So it's understandable that people are afraid to make these changes. So it actually really benefits diverse communities when things happen, like we have viral videos of influencers from our culture, or movements like the Black Lives Matter movement happens, because it forces people to make the change. And then it's up to us, in whether we're Black or Asian, to go out and buy the product and support the product, to show them that, like, no, we're here and we were waiting for this, so keep making it.
So we will definitely get into the impacts of the Black Lives Matter movement. But one thing that I want to explore just a little bit is the point that you've made that it is about the business. We must always remember that it's the bottom line that matters, and to help make sure that markets are tapping other potential dollars in terms of population. How is it that we're still having challenges convincing people that there is a target market that is into STEM and different ways of expressing culture and beauty and just fun ways of learning other than the traditional, predominantly white industry?
It's because there's already systems in place. So, like, for example, when I was at Toys R Us, we knew we were always going to develop about 15 new SKUs, right? For a brand. So I would go into a meeting and say, okay, here are 30 concepts. Which of these are we going to turn into the 15 SKUs? So we already have this set idea of what is going to be brought into the next season. And that's every company. Some companies have much more than 15 SKUs. Toys R Us had very narrow because it was a different store brand line. But at my last large company that I worked with, Creative Kids, when I was the VP there, we would develop 50 SKUs at a time, right? And you have this set number you have to do. You have a set time in which you have to do it. You have something you're already known for in the industry, and you're following kind of what works. You try to interject different things here and there, but what ends up happening is you have to stay late, and give up your personal time to make that happen, which I'm sure many people in the C-suite would say, no, you shouldn't do that for a company. And or you have to, work on the weekends if you want to do something extra. And that's a lot of what I would do. I would do extra work to make something that was a little bit out of the ordinary and give it a shot. Mm-hmm. So what I do today, I think, helps people who are not big companies, like startup, moms, dads that have a vision for a product that doesn't exist, to create their own product and spend the time that a company just doesn't have carved out into their schedule, develop that line, and maybe it would get picked up by a larger company, or maybe they would just pave their own way, like some of the big brands that we do see in our mass market stores now.
Let's dig a little bit deeper into the corporate and the way they do things. Now, this is not my industry, but my understanding is that the whole point of research and development is to spend dollars to carve time to make the space and focus on creating new products. Wouldn't some of the work that we're doing in terms of being exploratory about different products and toys and scientific thingamabobs for people of color, wouldn't that kind of fall into R&D?
So there are usually separate departments that do R&D. So my very first job out of a toy design was actually in the innovation team, and that was all we did. We came up with just new markets that we could reach. But a lot of that directive would still come from someone above us. They would say, there's a market opportunity here. We want to take that market from someone else, or we see white space, come up with something to fill this gap. So even the R&D teams can be led by some external force, whether it's a CMO or it's a market research group. And once that research is done, someone has to champion it, because even if they do the research and they say, yeah, we need to make like a Latin doll brand, and then the R&D team says, yeah, we're going to make this Latin doll brand, it's going to be so good. Somebody in that team has to champion it to get in front of the right people. Somebody in that team has to champion and make sure that the right people see, look at the audience, look at the market size. Somebody has to organize play tests and surveys. And if that's not already part of the process, it's just not going to happen. And if somebody doesn't work overtime, it might not happen, So that's why.
What about focus groups? I mean, what's immediately coming to mind is something that Dr. Bevelyn Mendez said when she and I were doing a podcast for Easter Seals. And she said, their motto is nothing about us without us. Instead of people making arbitrary decisions about what will and won't play out in the toy industry, how about focus groups that are targeted to the different types of people that you're now trying to create something for and market to? Where does focus groups come in?
They do have that. So Mattel and Hasbro has their own in-house focus group. They have like a play lab where kids will come in and play with products. And that happens all throughout the design and ideation process. They're smaller companies, which honestly, when I say smaller, they're not as small as you're thinking. Like, these are still multi-million-dollar companies, but in the toy world, with margins that can range from 30 to 50%, that's still a small company, right? So smaller companies won't have an internal team. That means they have to rely on the connections they have to an external team that could provide them, like, how do I say it, like broad enough selection of people that could be part of that focus group. So they're relying on their own connections, which means they're relying on their own community. And if the C-suite team is all white, then that just might happen to be who's in their community. So it's like this domino effect. But what I experienced as being in the C-suite, as a Black woman, I got nervous to try things that were too out there because I'm like, I got a good job. I love this job. I don't want to lose this job because I wanted to like try to do something. I had some crazy ideas. I told my boss and he was like, we will lose our major customer if we do that. And I was like, but we will gain so much clout. Like people will love this brand. But I just didn't push it because I'm like, listen, this is not the cross I'm going to die on right now. This is not it. So the challenge becomes for Black women and men as they go up in the industry, if they're alone in the C-suite, do I fight this fight by myself?
Wow. Was there ever a product where you did kind of push the limits and it was accepted, and how did that go?
I mean, I pushed the limits and it wasn't accepted. And then but I was very
How'd that go? Tell us how that went.
I was very young and very new. I had designed, it was very simple thing. They just asked me to design, it was like a mermaid, and they were like, design the mermaid and do the color selection, color ops for this, paint ops for this mermaid. So I chose the Pantone colors, and I made her have a medium brown skin tone because I thought, one, it looks like me, and two, it's like in the middle. So I was like, this is a good color. And I think I gave her like reddish hair. So I was like, she's just ambiguous, and they like immediately, as soon as I handed it in, it came back to me and they were like, you need to make her white and blonde with blue eyes. And I was like, I'm sorry. What?
They literally, that was the feedback that they gave you?
Feedback. Well, no, it started a little softer. And then I pretended like I didn't know what they were talking about. And then they were like, white and blonde. And this is a long time ago, but yeah, that happens. Or it happened, I should say.
Yeah. And so now, so I want to interrupt you. So telling that story,
yes.
What do you think about how the most recent adaptation of The Little Mermaid was perceived?
Oh, I mean, I loved it. Well, are you talking doll or movie?
I'm talking about the movie, because some people said that is not what a mermaid looks like, and yada yada yada.
Oh yeah, that is exactly what I made her. Yeah, wow, I didn't even realize I did. Wow.
Yes. Wow. So you were being innovative and forward thinking, right? So many years ago, and even today, some people just couldn't handle the concept that a mermaid might look something different.
They couldn't handle it. No, they couldn't handle it. And I have a comment about the Little Mermaid toy that came out.
Okay.
So toy companies release licensed product. Licenses are awarded to companies based on merit and past experience and relationships and all kinds of things. They're divided by category. So the company that got the license for Little Mermaid did a beautiful job with this mermaid. But then this other company called the Dr. Lisa company came out with this patented lock technology, like hair locking technology for dolls. And it had never been done before. Factories had always said, we can't make that hairstyle. It's impossible. And she made it happen. And I just remember when I saw this doll, I was like, what a missed opportunity for some authenticity to just continue from the movie to the doll. And a licensing agreement isn't something you can end abruptly like that. It's not something they could have like swapped over for just a new, for this one company to do this one product. But those details matter so much. And like, I just wish, and I almost hope that in the future, Dr. Lisa gets a chance to have that license, because she could have real lock hair, which just would be chef's kiss,
Yeah. Wow. Community, this has been one fascinating conversation as we kick off African American History Month, Black History Month, and the theme for African American History Month in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, is African Americans and the Arts, which is why I'm so delighted to have Joining us, the toy coach, Azhelle Ward. In our next conversation, I want you to stick around because we're going to be talking about something that she referred to earlier in terms of the Black Lives Movement and the influence there might be lacking around the toy community and diversity. So come back. If you want to hear this particular podcast again, go to my website, drnita.com. On the landing page, click the link that says Keeping It Real Podcast. And while you're there, please feel free to check out my services and my resources. And please, 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 it's 2024. Help me early to get in the flow. Follow, like, and overshare any conversation that helps you reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Please share them with your network. Until next time, this is Dr. Anita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.